my name is Annette, and I am just so happy that you made it this far to this short video that I want to explain to you to address your fears about your loved one passing. Many of us have many fears. I understand where you're coming from because I lived through them for over 2 years, and that is why I have such a passion to share what I'm going to be sharing with you today. First, I want to make you understand that I understand where you're coming from. That's one thing. However, I also want you to know that I'm here not to sell you anything at all. I mean, that sounds a little weird, but it's just my mission to get out the information that I have today. I want to get it out to you so that you can feel at peace knowing that one of these days when the time comes, or if you're going through it right now, that you can have peace when a loved one passes. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you something that will change your lives, and it's all for free. Okay, honest to God, I'm not selling you anything today, and just stick with me to the end, and I hope you will be blessed. Well, before we start, I will go over the quiz with you, but I wanted to first of all ask you a few questions because I need to know that we are on the same page and that the gravity of not knowing what to do when a loved one passes, the fears that you face are so real. There's a lot of things that you don't know, um, that you never were taught, and I am talking to you through experience because this is what I went through. Let me go over some of the things that I think will resonate with you, and we can go from there. First, let me ask you a few questions. If something were to happen to you tonight or today, would your spouse or whoever your beneficiary is know how to pay all the bills? Do they know where the checkbook is? Do they know if the bills are paid by check, by auto payment by the bank? Do they know how to write checks even? Do they know how to balance a checkbook? You know, do they know the bank account and the bank account numbers? If if you know this much, if your spouse passes away, then this is awesome because that you're ahead of many people that don't know anything. Normally in a family, one spouse handles all the finances, the other spouse has no clue, and when something happens, it's a real big mess. And a lot of spouses think I'm not going to worry about it because I'm just hoping to go before he does, right? But that's not the way to look at things. It's not being responsible. Number one, avoidance doesn't help anything at all. So that's one of the questions. Is about your bills. The second question is if your spouse has all your files, your important files, in the computer, and something were to happen to him, do you know his password to get to these important folders? That's a pretty basic question that we should be asking, but many of us don't think about it. Another thing is, do you know where the motor vehicle registration for your car is? If something happens to your spouse, do you know where to find it? Do you know who is on the ownership papers? And if it's just him, how do you sell the car? Another thing that's a little thing that people don't, I can honestly guarantee that you have never thought about this. If something were to happen to your spouse today and you were to take his keychain, would you be able to identify every single key on the keychain and what it opens? If you cannot, you're probably with the other 99% of the people that never think about these things. Well, today I'm going to address many of these things. Everything that I'm going to tell you is what I lived through. And at the end of this video, I will offer you something so free and so awesome that you're going to just be blown away. Okay, so stick with me, okay? But let me go over the quiz first that you took just to address the categories that you fell into. You fell into one of three categories. One is KB or knowledge blocker. The other category is GB or goal blocker, or GLB, which stands for glow blocker. So let me tell you about what these stand for. KB or knowledge blocker means that your fear is that you will be faced with this passing of a loved one and you have no clue what to do because you were never taught this knowledge, never thought about getting the knowledge, and so when you're faced with it, you are just stuck and you're not sure where to go, what your path is. There's no path because you don't know what your next step is. The second category is called GB or Go Blocker, and what this means is you need to move forward when this happens, but you have a very hard time because you're not sure what your next step is, like just like lack of knowledge. So what happens is rather than moving forward, you feel like you're just stuck where you're at because you can't move forward because you're just paralyzed and not know what to do next. That is the goal blocker. You don't know how to go or how to move forward. The GLB category is called the glow blocker. And when I talk about glow, I'm talking about having joy. And when something happens to a past one, how can you find joy? I mean, you're in the middle of grief, depression, anxiety, loneliness. So your joy is taken away from you. And that is why it's called the glow blocker. Well, this can be addressed by just looking at different things that you can do so that when you hit that situation, you can have some peace because you will have time to grieve and not have to worry about these other things. So those are the three categories. I believe that we all belong to one of the three categories in some way. And I want to tell you what to do to get out of this rut or this categories that you're stuck in that you can't move forward. So listen to my story and be blessed. I hope you will be totally blessed by the end of this because, as I mentioned, what I'm giving you today is totally free. So stick with me to the end, okay? Let me introduce myself again. My name is Annette. I have been an RN for 42 years before retiring in 2015. In 2018, my father-in-law passed away suddenly, and I found the next 2 years to be so full of stress only because I thought everything was in order. He had passed away at the age of 99. His checkbooks were balanced to the penny. He had shown us where all his important papers were 16 years before then. He had his will, his trust, his power of attorney, his advance directives, his funeral plan, everything that people tell you is what you need to get. And if you have these things, your your spouse or your beneficiaries can handle things because these are the most important papers. And yes, they are important. And I urge everybody to get these papers. However, what I found out over the next 2 years is that those papers were just the tip of the iceberg of what I needed to know. You know, throughout those 2 years of taking care of my mother-in-law, when my father-in-law passed, my mother-in-law was 89 years old, and all she said was, "You do everything." And what do you tell your mother-in-law? She tells you to do that because basically she knew nothing. She didn't pay a bill in her life. She had never written a check in her life, and yet she was thrown into this situation where she didn't know what to do because my father-in-law had handled everything, which is something common in many households, right? So anyway, I went through the next 2 years with many hurdles, many challenges, very stressed because each time I came across a hurdle, I kept saying, I wish I had known. I wish I had known this. I wish I had known that. Why didn't somebody warn me that I had to do this? Or why is there no education out there that this needs to be done? Because these are so important things that people just don't think about. For example, 10 days after my father-in-law passed, my mother-in-law's landline phone was broken. It sounds like a simple problem to fix. You just call up the telephone company, they'll send somebody out to fix it, right? Wrong. This was a situation that I hope nobody ever has to live through like I lived through. When my father-in-law passed, the phone was broken. The telephone company said their policy was that in order to get it fixed, you had to have authorized signature or authorized person. My mother-in-law was not an authorized person because she was never on the bill. So she basically never existed. Yet the bill was being paid. What they had wanted to do was they wanted to have his death certificate before they would fix the telephone, which of course was unacceptable because he had just passed away 10 days and we had just met with the funeral home and we had just ordered the death certificates, which wouldn't be here for another 4 weeks. So here we're stuck with what to do. So honest to God, it took me 29 phone calls, 3 months, and getting the Better Business Bureau involved to get this phone fixed and other things that followed that were issues. So, just this little thing of having a second person on the bill can cause a lot of avoid having many problems down the road. That's one story. So what I did was throughout this whole time that I went through all these hurdles and challenges and stress, I started jotting down in a college wood notebook all the things that I wish I had known. And I was just shocked because by the time at the end of the 2 years, I had listed over 110 items I wish I had known that would have made life a lot easier. So I gave this list to friends. Most of my friends are baby boomers with aging parents or aging spouses. And every single person that I gave this rough list to told me it was so helpful and how important it was to get this information out and that I needed to write a book. So that is exactly what I did. This is the book I wrote. It's called Wait, Don't Die Yet. And I think it's a very catchy title because, death has no pause button. You don't want to think that people are going to die, but you can't tell them to wait because when it happens, it's going to happen. I mean, it could happen 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. It could happen tonight or tomorrow. So this book is a book that I wrote. One third of the book is my story, and there's other chapters in between. And then the last third is, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a fillable guidebook so that you can prepare ahead of time so that when the time comes, you'll have less stress. You'll have peace about what to do because it's all written down. Your heirs, your spouse, if he's left behind, will know what to do. Let me just read the subtitle of the book. It's called "Wait, Don't Die Yet: A Complete Guide to All Things No One Really Wants to Think About, but Everyone Needs to Know Before, During, and After a Loved One's Passing." This book is the most is very dear to my heart. I wrote it with money left to us by my in-laws, and I wrote it as a legacy to them so that people can learn from what I went through, so that people like you don't have to go through what I went through. It has everything in here that covers before, during, after, and after the after. Let me explain that. Before is preparing ahead of time by listing all the important papers that you need, all the important information, things like your bank account, your insurance, your pension, numbers to call in case something happens. It also lists your stocks and rentals. Um, it even has a section there for your medical history. If something happened to your spouse tonight and he ended up in the hospital, would you be able to, just like this, without looking up anything on your medication cart or whatever where you put your medications, would you be able to give the hospital without hesitation a list of medications he is on, uh, what they're for, the dosage, how often it's taken? Do you know the number of his doctor? Do you know his doctor's name? So these are the things that are in here that I believe you will find incredibly useful. Now that's the preparing ahead of time. Then there's going to be a point in time where many of us our spouses will get ill or our parents will get ill, and then there's a transition as to what am I supposed to do next? What should I be looking for when this happens? And part of the book is about caregiving. For example, part of it is caregiving when in the transition, or finding a good home for for your parents, or finding a good caregiver for your parents. Um, and most people think, well, it's not that hard. I mean, I can just look for a place that's safe, clean, that people are friendly, and there's an RN that runs the place that knows what they're doing, and that is very true. I mean, that is the important points, but there's so much more that people don't think about. For example, would you send your spouse or your parent to a care home that didn't feed them what they wanted to eat so that they would have no desire to eat? My mother-in-law, her caregiver was so loving, and she went out of her way to find out what the people she took care of, what were their favorite foods, and she made sure that they had their favorite foods at least once or twice a week. Now, in my mother-in-law's case, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but her favorite foods were Coke, sushi, Taco Bell, tacos, and Burger King Whoppers. And her caregiver was kind enough and cared enough to make sure that she had those at least once a week. And she was a happy camper, and she loved the place that she was at because they cared for the little things that people just don't think about. In this book, I interviewed many caregivers so that they could impart their wisdom to you. You may end up being a caregiver for your in-laws, I mean for your parents or your spouse, and you need to gain knowledge from others who have gone before you. You shouldn't have to learn this along the way, because there's thousands of people who have gone before you, and we need to learn by their experience. And this is what this book brings. Okay, so that's the during transition. After the active part is about after your loved one passes away, and what you need to do step by step. It guides you through contacting the funeral home, and things like little things like making sure that the ring that is on the finger gets taken off before they are buried. I mean, little things like this that people just don't think about, and these are the things that I learned along the way. Now that's after they pass away. The section on after the after is when both parents pass away, and the kids have to have closure, and they have to do certain things like closing the bank account. How do you do certain things? And even little things that are included in this book are things like, after your parents pass away, how do you even begin to address cleaning up a home that has 70 years of accumulation? I mean, when you're faced with this household full of 70 years of items that may or may not be important, what do you do with them? When my father-in-law and my mother-in-law passed away, there were photo albums, there were empty mayonnaise jars and jam jars, and just things that, paint cans in a garage that were never used. So this book addresses, number one, how to even begin to start to clean up 70 years of accumulation. And not only that, but it also puts you in the position where if you're the person that is going to pass away eventually, how could you leave all this stuff for your beneficiaries to clean up, right? Your kids, the person who's going to clean up after you leave this world is going to be a loved one, a close loved one that you care for. So how can you not care enough to take care of things ahead of time, from getting records in order to cleaning up your house? So this book tells you everything. It also has sections on communicating with your loved one to bring up this issue of filling out the guidebook. It's a very sensitive topic. People don't like to talk about it, don't want to bring it up, because their loved one is going to think, why? Do you think I'm dying already? Why you bring this up? I'm still healthy. It doesn't make any sense. So this book also has a chapter about communication, how to approach your loved one to get this book done. There's also a chapter on a file system because once you have everything in order and you got the paperwork, where do you put it? So this book tells you exactly how to set up a file system. What I like to tell people is, if you get the book, you just fill it out in the back totally. You tell your beneficiaries, your spouse, your kids, where this book can be found, and hopefully it's in a file system that you set up according to the book, okay? And then all they have to do is look for this book, turn to the back, and everything that they need to know will be in here. There should be no reason that there should be any stoppage of work to be done. For example, when my father-in-law passed away, I spent hours, and I literally mean hours, on the phone trying to track down his pension plans, his insurance, who to call. I would be transferred to so many different numbers, extensions, until I got to the right department. Now, I live in Hawaii, and Hawaii time, when I wake up, other places on the mainland, which may be 6 hours forward of us, are actually closing up. So this can create big problems. So this book will have all the phone numbers of everything, contact people for insurance. Everything is listed in here. So I cannot tell you how important this book is, not just only because I wrote it, but because I know that it works and that it will give you peace of mind. Now remember, I told you I'm not selling you anything. I want you to click the link below. That will take you to my website. On that website will be a way to download this book in an ebook form for free. It's totally free, no strings attached. You can even download the free guidebook. And all I ask is that if you find this book useful and valuable, the only thing I ask is that you take a couple minutes, go into Amazon, and do a review of this book. When you go to my site, you can download the free ebook and the guidebook, but you can also, if you wanted to look at the reviews on Amazon. I really highly encourage you to look at the reviews because I know that my mission is getting somewhere because I read the reviews of people I don't even know who say that the book has changed their lives. I get emails because I have my email in this book so that I'm not hiding anything. You can email me if you need to for anything. I'm getting emails telling me how after they had filled out the guidebook, they have so much peace knowing that things are prepared and that should their loved one pass or they pass, that things will be in order. So may I just please impress upon you the importance of just downloading the free ebook and just get started, get prepared so that when the time comes, you don't have to fear. You will be prepared. You will have prepared your family. And when it happens, it'll give you time to grieve without being overwhelmed with all these other things that need to be done. To me, God led me to write this book for a reason. I am doing it as my mission. I am not asking for any donations or money. It's a free ebook. If you prefer to buy the book, that's up to you, but it's not necessary. I just pray that you will take action now. Take action today and let it be the start of peace of mind for you for when a loved one passes. Thank you so much and God bless.